50 forks. 50. Not silverware, not heirlooms. Garden variety forks you pried out of a goblin camp between your third and fourth murder. One blood-soaked goblin chest plate. Size extra small, ventilation holes courtesy of your sword. And a suspiciously cheerful village merchant who looks at this pile of cursed silverware and says, "Yes, I'll take all of it. That'll be 12 gold." Merchant smiles, transaction complete. Items vanish. Where did it go? Where does it ever go? This guy has a stall, a table, maybe a cart if he's doing well. He has no warehouse, no shipping manifest, no employee named Derek who handles logistics. He has, by my count in Skyrim, approximately 750 gold total and a dream. And yet, he will buy every iron dagger, wolf pelt, and stolen sweet roll you dump on him without a single follow-up question. Today, we're gonna find out why. Because underneath every RPG's trading system is a shadow economy so logistically insane it makes Wall Street look like a lemonade stand. I'm not saying video game merchants are secretly running the world. I'm saying the evidence is difficult to ignore. Total recycling. The most charitable theory, and the one that holds up to at least mild scrutiny, is that RPG worlds have achieved something our civilization has been desperately attempting since the 1970s, a perfect, circular economy. In Witcher 3, every blacksmith in Novigrad will buy your damaged swords, not because they want decorations, because they are running industrial-grade smelting operations behind that charming medieval facade. That iron sword you got in Hour 1, the one you've been dragging around for sentimental reasons, back in the furnace. That cracked leather armor from a bandit camp, someone's already cutting it into bootlaces. The loot table giveth, and the recycling economy taketh away. This theory actually has real-world precedent. Pre-industrial economies had almost zero material waste. Rag and bone men collected literally everything: old metal, fabric scraps, bones for fertilizer. It wasn't charity, it was an entire supply chain. Your RPG merchant? He's not a shopkeeper, he's a materials broker feeding a local manufacturing network you never see. In Fallout, this is basically canon. The entire economy runs on salvage. Your junk isn't junk, it's pre-processed manufacturing input. The iron, back to the forge. The leather, back to the tannery. The 50 forks? Honestly, probably just a fancy dinner somewhere. Even post-apocalypse, someone deserves nice cutlery. But here's where the theory breaks down. If merchants are just middlemen for recycling, why do they have limited gold? Shouldn't they be flush with resale revenue? Why does every merchant in Baldur's Gate 3 look at 40,000 gold worth of inventory and offer you, with a straight face, 8,000? The recycling model explains the destination. It doesn't explain the economics. Lords of War. Here's a number that should unsettle you. In a typical Skyrim playthrough, you will sell roughly 300 weapons before the end credits, in a world that's supposedly struggling with a civil war and a dragon problem. Where do 300 swords go? To armies. The theory, every village merchant is a procurement agent for one faction or another. You're not selling to a shopkeeper, you're feeding the loot table of the next conflict zone. The Stormcloaks need swords. The Imperial Legion needs armor. The merchants are the invisible logistics layer between your murder sprees and the next battle. This isn't even that speculative. In medieval Europe, pre-battle arms markets sprang up within days of a campaign announcement. Merchants knew. They always know. In Baldur's Fate 3, consider, every major faction, the Absolute, the Harpers, the Flaming Fist, needs weapons and armor constantly. The merchants of Baldur's Gate aren't neutral parties, they are arms dealers with a cover story. Which explains one of gaming's most beloved mysteries: why merchants have so little gold. It's not that they're poor, it's that their real money moves in bulk procurement contracts, not retail. What you see in their coin purse is the operational float. The real gold is already in some general's war chest. This also explains why waiting 48 in-game hours resets their inventory. The shipment came in, the contract renewed, the cycle continues. You thought you were selling a dagger to a shopkeeper. You were feeding a war economy, and you never got the royalties. But wait, not everything you sell is a weapon. What about the magic rings, the enchanted boots, the cursed amulet you got from a lich and definitely should not have worn for 4 hours? The magic complex. In RPG settings, magic items are physically impossible. They shouldn't exist. A sword that glows and freezes enemies isn't just a sharp piece of metal, it's a complex thermodynamic anomaly held together by something. Let's call it magical energy, essence, enchantment substrate. What if merchants aren't buying the item? What if they're buying the energy inside it? Think of it as a battery economy. That frost rune sword you found in a Nordic tomb, the merchant doesn't want the iron. Iron is everywhere. He wants the cryo-magical condensate crystallized in the blade over 200 years. You just handed him the equivalent of a fully charged power cell and took 12 gold for it like an absolute amateur. In The Witcher 3, the lore explicitly describes magical items as vessels for stored power. When you sell a rune-enhanced sword, you're not selling steel, you're selling labor hours of a master craftsman's magical output. This creates a fascinating secondary market. Merchants are essentially magical energy brokers, stripping enchantments, storing them, and reselling them to the next mage who needs a quick power source. The sword goes back at scrap, the enchantment becomes someone else's spell component. And you got 12 gold. Again, amateur. This theory also explains gold sinks in RPG economies. Every time you sell an enchanted item below market value, you're essentially subsidizing the magical industrial complex. You are an unwitting donor to a system that uses your artifacts to power the world's mage colleges, keep the streetlights on, and probably fuel whatever horrifying ritual the final boss is planning. You're not a hero selling loot, you are Big Magic's most reliable supply chain, and you work for free. The Merchant Illuminati. Here's a final thought that will ruin every future playthrough. Notice how every merchant in every city on every continent always has roughly the same amount of gold, same inventory reset cycle, same inexplicable willingness to buy your garbage? That's not a coincidence, that's a network. The merchants are organized. They have to be. One lone shopkeeper in a village cannot possibly process the volume of swords, armor, and miscellaneous fork-related detritus that adventurers generate. No single entity could sustain that economically, but a guild could. A guild with a centralized clearinghouse, regional price fixing, and a shared vault somewhere under the ocean where all the surplus goes to prevent hyperinflation from turning every copper into worthless metal. They buy everything. They value nothing. They regulate the entire adventuring economy from the shadows, sacrificing their margins to keep your dopamine flowing and the game world from collapsing into monetary chaos. The Thieves Guild? Small time. The Merchant Illuminati? They own the Thieves Guild's debts. The matrix behind the counter. Okay, cards on the table. We need to talk about the fourth theory, the one that breaks the fourth wall, and possibly your will to live. The merchant doesn't have a real economy. You do. The merchant exists to serve a psychological function, not a narrative one. Every merchant in every RPG is a carefully engineered suspension of disbelief delivery device. Their entire purpose is to keep your dopamine loop running so you don't notice the seams in the simulation. Here's what actually happens when you sell 50 forks. The game engine removes those items from your inventory variable, adds a gold value to your gold variable, and plays a satisfying ka-ching. That's it. The forks don't go anywhere. The merchant's gold doesn't go anywhere. The economy is a number on a screen dressed in a medieval coat. But here's what's brilliant about how this is designed. The game designers understood something fundamental about human psychology. We need to feel like our actions make sense. If selling items gave you zero context, just a number going up, it would feel hollow. So they gave you a merchant, a face, a voice line, a cheerful "business has been good lately" from a character who has literally never sold anything to anyone except you for the entire playthrough. The ritual of the transaction, walk up, open menu, accept gold, is a behavior loop designed to be satisfying, not logical. The merchant in Skyrim who has 750 gold, that number isn't there because Belethor made financial decisions. It's there because if he had unlimited gold, you'd feel no constraint, and constraint creates meaningful choice. So, the merchant, with his absurdly limited budget, his mysterious ability to always have slightly worse gear than what you just sold him, is actually one of the most carefully calibrated psychological instruments in game design. He's not a character, he's a service. And we love him for it anyway. What we agreed with the NPC. So here's what we know. RPG merchants are simultaneously industrial recyclers, war economy procurement agents, magical energy brokers, and psychological support systems engineered to validate your compulsive looting habits. Pick whichever theory makes you happiest. They all work. Because the reality of a video game economy is that it only has to be believable enough, not actually coherent. And merchants, bless their infinitely patient hearts, exist precisely at the intersection of makes enough sense and don't think about it too hard. There is an unspoken contract between the player and every NPC shopkeeper in gaming history. You agree not to ask where the items go. They agree not to question why you have 847 wheels of cheese and need them valued immediately. You agree to accept 12 gold for a legendary enchanted blade. They agree to pretend that's a fair price. It's a mutually beneficial illusion, and it has powered hundreds of millions of hours of gameplay without a single protest from either party. The forks go into the void, the gold comes out of the void. And somewhere, a very happy subroutine is maintaining the fiction that this transaction meant something. It did, just not the way you think. The best economies aren't the ones that make economic sense. They're the ones you never stop to question. The dragon in the form of a shopkeeper. Or, and stay with me here, it's much simpler than any of that. The merchant just likes stuff. Not in a greedy way, not in an investment way, in the same way a dragon likes gold. It's compulsive, irrational, and entirely sincere. He doesn't know what he'll do with 500 iron daggers. He doesn't need to. They exist. They are now his. The transaction is its own reward. Behind every merchant stall, there is a room. Behind every room, a door. Behind that door, a vast cavern of accumulated junk. Swords and forks and cracked shields and wolf pelts piled in a magnificent heap that the merchant visits at night alone and is simply content. He is not a shopkeeper. He is a dragon who figured out property law. And honestly, respect. That's the most relatable character in any RPG.